action. Cut. When I was in film school, I remember reading a quote from a director, and the director had sort of responded to some criticism that there wasn't enough action in the movie for an action movie. And I think his quote was, I only had 14 million, there's no way I can make an action film for 14 million. That just blew my mind. It's like, there's no way that you need $14 million to make an action film. That just is crazy to me. So I started turning my focus towards trying to get the most production value that I possibly could out of nothing, basically, but geared towards like action. So once I sort of got the hang of it and figured out how to sort of visually create a fight scene, just to do it with camera tricks and camera angles and editing and sound effects, I had this idea to do just a fight scene, just without having to build a story around it, to just literally go out and shoot a fight that had no purpose other than to be a fight. Which doesn't sound that revolutionary, but in my mind at the time, I was like, this is gonna be great. I called that one Split Lip, and that was like the first time I'd made something under that sort of name, and it had a huge reaction as far as online. That blew up. It got like 30,000 views. But what was cool was that I got a really good reaction from people who felt like it worked, and that just sort of like that clicked for me. Like, okay, like I did this right. I shot this right. Like I made the action sell without anything, without any money. It was just me and some friends and a camera.
I was in college and he approached me with this idea. He had already been doing this series called Split Lip. He invited me to be in one of them with another friend of ours, or I guess two friends of ours. And it was very short, no storyline really. It was just like me, this friend on a basketball court, and I'm like dribbling a basketball, and then suddenly I get into a fight.
Come get me.
Like it's wild.
That is where I decided to sort of adopt the name Split Lip that I had already created and sort of readapt it into something that was way more meaningful for me.
He said that he wanted to do a feature film that would have nothing to do with the short series that he had done. This one would have a storyline, and it became what is now today Split Lip.
On the surface, the concept of the film is you have a sort of like a seedy, like shadow corporation that runs revenge kills.
Let's get one thing straight before we begin. My people do not make mistakes.
The reality of the antagonist is this is a film about the consequence of violence and what it does to people and what it does to people's lives.
It's just a very different character than what I'm used to playing. It's either the comedic character that I would play, or it would be like the love interest of somebody, and she's definitely not that. She wants to kick your butt and then ask questions later, sort of thing. Like, she was a lot of fun. Very difficult at times to portray truthfully in the moment because of that. You don't really know what she's thinking until the very end of the film, so that'll be fun for some people.
For me, writing has to be a reflex. You have to treat it like it's something that you're gonna do on that day, regardless of whether or not you want to. You have to be able to put something down and then come back and fix it if you don't like it, but there has to be something down. This is indie film, so what you're writing is not absolute. Nothing you write is absolute because you don't have the money to make it absolute. You don't have the money to guarantee the things that you want to guarantee. There's gonna be a lot of things that are up in the air because your script is gonna change. Elements are gonna change, location is gonna change, actors are gonna change, dialogue is absolutely gonna change. Going into the writing process knowing that there's a sense of versatility to it will save you a ton of headache in production because you're already aware of what the purpose of that scene is and what the intent of that scene is, and you're able to find another way to say it.
She has, even before the start of the film, made a mistake that she's trying to rectify throughout this entire experience. She's quiet with an intensity and a presence, and yet she's got this soft side that she tries to hide. I love characters like that are broken and are trying to figure out how to rectify things. And I think that's what Set is, without giving too much away.
One of the first things that I shot on the film was the very first sequence that you see in the movie. And I shot portions of that a year before I ever went into production, and that was sort of a proof of concept to prove both to myself that I could do it, to my actors that I could do it, and to people who would then, closer to the production, lend me money to help create it, that I could do that what I said I could, that I could sell the violence, that I could sell the action on a scale of something that you would see, in a major motion picture. I cut together what would be considered like an early draft of maybe the first 5 minutes of the film, and then I took that, both those images, those photos, and clips of that footage, and then I took that to Indiegogo, and I started an Indiegogo campaign. By the end of that Indiegogo, you find out what you're gonna have to play with, and I think we got $7,000 from that Indiegogo, and I was very, very thankful to get the 7, and then from that, I believe I received another, I think it was, it was another $1,000 all in. So we were covering a lot of footage just on our way out to Arizona, just picking up a lot of the driving shots and driving sequences. On the way, I had friends texting me like, "Oh my God, I didn't know your film was starting. I had meant to donate, and I never got a chance to." So, so between the initial 7, I think it was $8,000 that we went out there with, and then between that and my credit card, we got the first leg of the film shot. I decided to try Indiegogo a second time just to see how it would work out. That gave us, I think, I want to say we got an extra 2 or 3 from that push, which really made the next, 4 or 5 shooting days in Los Angeles possible. And at that point, by the end of those 2 blocks of shooting, we were completely drained dry.
I had done some work with prosthetics before, never for like film, but like in a live performance thing. So I was very used to like having blood on my face and like having the bruise makeup and the burning sensation of the alcohol. So that wasn't an issue. But otherwise it was only 45 minutes, which actually isn't too long for prosthetics. A lot of people are in the chair for like hours. So I was very lucky to just have progressive bruises and split lips. From the start of filming, it would just be like a scab or something like that, and then as filming went on, it would just get worse and worse and worse, and then my face would get like bloodier and bloodier and bloodier and more bruised, obviously.
When it comes to a skeleton crew, I'm gonna give you your bare minimum essentials, and even if you have a great crew, you need a North Star. You need a guiding light, somebody that says yes and no to all of the hundreds of decisions that could be made in that moment. You need someone who says absolute yes or absolute no. That's your director, necessary. Next one, you need an AD, because the director's head is in the story. And the director does not need to be worrying about whether or not lunch is on its way, what actor is showing up, who's in makeup, and what's next on the script. They need to be focused on what's now in the script. Obviously, you need a DP, somebody who's controlling the visuals and who his sole focus is to make sure that everything looks great and is in focus and is cinematically in the direction that you should be going consistently from scene to scene. And then you need a sound guy. You need a sound guy. You need a sound guy. I can't stress that more. You could have bad visuals, you cannot have bad sound. An audience will excuse a bumpy camera. They will not excuse a noisy scene. They will not excuse audio that sounds like it was coming out of a tin can. Like that, you break the magic trick completely at that point. Excuse the language, but it's shit in, shit out. Like you can't, if you put bad sound in, there is no sound guy in the world who can fix that in post. You have to get good sound on site. And honestly, you want it because it changes the performance. From a boom mic over here ruins your shot. A boom mic right here brings your audience right in where they should be. Right where your actor is putting them, and that is 100% necessary. So right now we have what? We have a director, a DP, an AD, a sound guy. Okay. The very next thing I would put on there is a gaffer. You need somebody who, when your DP is on the camera, they can move the lights, because otherwise you're going to spend the entire day with the DP going from the camera to move a light, to come back to the camera, to move a light, and that's really going to slow you guys down. You need the DP to be able to stay where he needs to be and, you know, have a set of hands that's moving those things for him. The list that I just gave you, that you could enter into a feature with just that and still come out with a feature.
How much time do I have? In college, I took a few classes, a few capoeira classes. It's like Afro-Brazilian martial arts. So having an awareness of my body, or a better awareness of my body, was very helpful. I'm also a dancer, so I know how to move my body in a way that I won't hurt myself. And I had taken maybe like one class in college on like stage combat. But luckily enough, Chris had done some fight choreographies and he knows what he's doing and how to choreograph it in a way that looks real, and when he films it, appears real.
Okay, all right, so let me watch this half speed. So we're here, headbutt, boom, boom, yeah. I knew that what my capabilities were gonna be with a camera and with a camera and lighting and certain angles. I feel confident that I could take, 3 elderly women and shoot a John Wick scene, because it all comes down to how you frame it, how you shoot it, how you teach them to move. And things don't have to be, one long sequence or anything like that. They don't have to be experts. You just have to be able to sell it cinematically, because it's all, everything that we do with a camera is a magic trick. You just have to be able to pull off the magic trick. And I just happened to spend an exorbitant amount of time practicing one magic trick.
We cheated a lot of different shots, and I was never really in danger. I didn't get hurt. I think at most, like, I was sore all over just because I wasn't used to moving my body in that particular way. Everything else was completely safe. And I'm also the type of actor, I'm kind of a physical actor too, depending upon what the scene is. I'll ask the person that I'm supposed to be fighting that day to either really do something or apply a certain pressure here or there so that I have an idea of what my character was going through. So for example, in that junkyard scene, the guy that I'm fighting is like 5 times my size. Like, dude is buff, okay? And his character slams my character into a car hood. And because he's so strong and he can control his strength, he sat me down gently, and I was like, well, that doesn't do anything for me, like, as an actor. It's okay if you just wanna, and Jeff would step in and be like, no, maybe don't do that.
We practiced it, I choreographed it, we talked about it. Every single shot was blocked 6 or 7 times, in slow motion before we even tried it full speed. And certain amenities were brought out there. If somebody was going to the ground, we'd bring something for them to land on,
I was never really in any danger, but because I had asked for the opportunity to see what that would feel like, with the moderation, obviously, I think I got a real reaction.
Cut. I knew that, I was going to be very, very tight on my budget. I knew that I was only going to be able to afford a skeleton crew, an absolute, heads of each department, and that only, and most of those people will be pulling double duty. I think there's definitely an element of freedom to DPing for yourself. Unfortunately, there's also an element of pressure. There are times when you're in the scene and something isn't working, and that elusive something, you just don't know what it is. You can't figure out what is it my light that doesn't make this work? Is it my frame? Is it the actor, the way they're reading it? But it's just not selling. And sometimes you're completely wrong. Sometimes it works and you're in your head about it. But sometimes it is something as simple as I should have more light coming in that back window, then it'll give them a little halo. This will feel right if I do that. Or sometimes it's I overlit this scene. This is flat. That's why it's not working, because there's no contrast. There's no lights, and there's no highlights and shadows for me to set my mood with. And then when you sort of get wrapped up in that, then there is kind of a mini struggle in your brain to figure out what do I focus on? Do I redirect your actor? Do I because if you're a director and you have a DP, it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, man, I don't like this light. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have signed off on this. Can we reset the light a little bit and just take it back from 1? And that's perfectly okay. But for you to make that decision in your head while everybody's looking at you, it's do I tell everybody, let's start over, I messed up twice, as a director and a DP, this was my mistake? The decision for what to do next happens in here like that. We can kind of, I can make all those decisions in my head, and then that's it. That's the absolute decision, and that's the course that we set ourselves on after that. It's definitely a struggle in that regard, but if you are tight on budget and you own equipment, it's an absolute feasible decision for you if you are familiar with your own gear to, you know, shoot and direct, like both DP and direct your film, especially on the very, very indie scale.
Up until recently, we didn't really get to see dark-skinned, African-American, strong female leads in real stories or even fantastic stories like this one. This is not your typical story. It's a bit gritty and brutal. It can be vulgar, and we don't really see a lot of Black actresses in roles like that. We tend to see some of the more stereotypical roles without going into like politics or whatever. I think it's really important to be able to have representation in roles like this. And for me, growing up, I didn't really see anything like that. I love action films, so this was kind of a dream opportunity. I think it's important to look outside of what has been normal the past couple of decades, and maybe try to reach for something new or a bit different, especially to touch on an audience that is thirsting for something like that. There's an entire audience that would go to the movies to see something like this.
If you have a way that you want to see the scene, shoot it that way. There were a lot of moments that like I had her play her line straight to the camera, and the actor opposite her, I didn't. I kept their eye line on her. And so, you know, if I were to say that to somebody who was like thinking in like classical cinematography, they would think that that was a mistake. They would think that, you know, like, oh, your eye line's gonna be off, it's not gonna look good for your audience. But I knew that that's what I want. I wanted that line to the lens. And, you know, and that's how it worked, and it worked out fantastic, and it gets across exactly what I want. It's because I trusted in that moment that, you know, the decision that I want to make is the one I'm going to make, and, you know, try not to let yourself get clouded by how people say things should be done or shouldn't be done. I promise you, right now, I promise you, at some point during your process, you will look at like 3/4 of the way done. You will look at your film and you'll be like, maybe I should just stop. Maybe it's not that good. And that's the dumbest thing to possibly think, but you will think that. There will come a point where you have these doubts because it's a long process shooting an indie film, especially if you're self-funded, especially if you're, you know, you're bleeding and sweating for your own project and you're pulling, you know, all the stops to make it happen. Odds are it's gonna take a long time, and that's okay. Piece of advice that another filmmaker gave me on my first feature, he said, you're never gonna be ready for it. You're never gonna be at a perfect point that you're ready to start. You're gonna be terrified up until the first time that you press the record button for the first shot of the day. And then from that point on, you will not have time to be scared.
There's really nothing more important than just going balls to the wall and just doing it. Because you're never gonna be ready, never. Just jump in and see where you land. When you don't do that, when you put yourself off or when you doubt yourself long enough, and when you don't step into what you believe you're created to do, you're taking something from yourself and the world. So if you're wanting to give back in any sort of way and you're an artistic person, you must jump in.
You have to come to terms with the fact that it's gonna take time, it's not gonna be immediately gratifying. You have to go into this knowing that you're doing this because you love doing it, because you want to connect with an audience, because you want to create a piece of art, because you want to tell a story. You have to go into it knowing that the rest of my life I'm committed to telling stories. This is just my first or my second step in that career.
I love low budget indie films, especially when you get to do them with friends. I think that's the best part.
Split Lip was an amazing experience in my life. I'm absolutely proud of what this film is and what we've created with it and what we were able to do. It's a really, really cool story. I'm beyond lucky that I'm the one that got to tell it. And I really hope that you guys enjoy what we did. And I hope you get to check out the movie. I hope you love the movie. And I hope you look forward to the next one, because I just want to entertain you guys for the rest of my life.
You sold her out.
She's a killer because we can't keep her around like a pet.
Kill me now or let me go. You're dead in 24 hours anyway.
No, please. I did. I'm sorry.
Take my word for it, honey. You got no idea what's coming for you.